November 19, 2018. The moment a private jet touched down on a Tokyo runway, dozens of Japanese police officers swarmed the aircraft from every direction. Inside sat one of the most celebrated businessmen alive, the CEO of not one, but two of the world's biggest car companies. A man who had graced magazine covers, filled stadiums with applause, and been immortalized in a comic book, selling over 1 million copies. They slapped handcuffs on him before he could even step off the plane. Within weeks, he was rotting in solitary confinement, stripped of his passports, banned from contacting his own family, and staring down a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of corporate power in both France and Japan. Most men in his position would have quietly surrendered. But this man was not most men. What he did next and how he escaped would shock the entire world. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel, The Insights, where today I am going to tell you the unbelievable true story of a man who was neither a thief nor a regular prisoner, nor the leader of any criminal gang. Before we step into one of the most daring escapes in modern history, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss any of our thrilling stories. Now, let's dive into the story. Today's story is about Carlos Ghosn, who was a Lebanese billionaire and simultaneously the CEO of Japan's famous car company, Nissan. Carlos originally hailed from Lebanon, but because he was the CEO of two massive car companies, he uniquely held 3 different nationalities: Lebanese, French, and Brazilian. He possessed a deep passion for cars, securing a job at the world-renowned Michelin tire company right after his graduation. Through sheer dedication, he rapidly climbed the ladder to become the head of Michelin's American division. Michelin had strong relations with Renault, a French car manufacturer that was navigating a disastrous phase and teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Carlos's extraordinary skills caught the eye of Renault's CEO, and when Carlos stepped in, the internal transformation began almost immediately. The method Carlos adopted to make the company profitable was incredibly aggressive. He systematically eliminated expenses causing financial harm, brutally closing low production factories and firing thousands of employees. After losing their livelihoods, workers organized massive protests across several countries, earning Carlos the fearsome nickname, the Cost Killer. However, his controversial decisions worked, and Renault successfully emerged from its dark times to become a remarkably powerful corporate giant. Following this monumental success, Carlos had only one goal left: to aggressively expand the business and compete directly with the biggest car manufacturers on the planet. To achieve this massive global expansion, Carlos decided that his company desperately needed a partnership with an international car company that already had a strong reputation and a well-known name in the market. The billionaire target that Carlos had in his mind for this strategic partnership was Nissan, which was a very famous Japanese car company. However, while Nissan was certainly famous, it was also going through a catastrophic financial crisis at that time, and its condition was arguably much worse than Renault's previous bad phase. Nissan was drowning in a staggering $20 billion of debt, and despite manufacturing more than 50 different car models, only 3 of their car models were actually selling in the competitive market. Carlos approached Nissan on behalf of Renault and presented the bold offer that they wanted to buy a massive 37% stake in their company so they could work together with Nissan and pull it out of this terrible phase. After this proposed partnership, Renault would have a significant amount of control over Nissan. The Japanese people are incredibly proud and are deeply known for maintaining absolute control over any of their industries, and they were fiercely opposed to the idea that any foreign company should buy such a massive stake in their company and interfere in their internal decisions. However, because absolutely no Japanese bank was willing to give Nissan a loan due to its terrible financial state, and no other corporate entity was ready to join hands with them, Nissan had no choice but to accept Carlos's offer and agree to the historic partnership with Renault. Before taking the reins at Nissan, Carlos made a public, ironclad oath. That oath was that he would make the company completely profitable within just 1 year, and that within a mere 3 years, the company would be entirely free from all of its massive debts. He boldly stated that if he was unsuccessful in doing so, he would immediately resign from the company and walk away. Seeing the company sinking fast, Nissan also agreed to this partnership, sold their 37% stake, and partnered with Renault, after which Carlos was officially appointed as the CEO of the company. This was an incredibly strange and shocking historical event because, up until that exact point, no foreigner had ever headed any Japanese company. As soon as he assumed the post of CEO, Carlos reached Japan and started visiting every single Nissan factory, while simultaneously beginning to formulate his master strategy to make the company profitable. The moment he took control of the company, Carlos forcefully shut down 5 of Nissan's factories and simultaneously fired all the workers of these factories from their jobs. This was the same ruthless method he had adopted back at Renault, and subsequently, the factory workers took to the streets to fiercely protest against the Renault-Nissan partnership. On the other hand, Carlos was neither affected by any protests nor was he listening to anyone. He was simply taking every harsh decision that was right to make the company profitable. Among these decisions, he took 2 more massive steps. The first was that in Nissan, which was a Japanese company, and where people gave immense importance to their native language, he officially declared English as the official language of the company, so that the business could rapidly expand globally. The second major decision he took was to completely abolish the traditional custom of giving promotions to seniors within the company. Now, he would only give incentives and promotions to those specific people who brought business to the company and earned direct profits. This was the exact decision that created many bitter enemies against Carlos right inside the company. However, precisely because of these cutthroat decisions, Nissan's dire situation began to improve, and it started earning massive profits. Within just a single year, the company started earning excellent profits and began touching incredible new heights, which led people to say that Carlos had a magic touch in his hands and could turn loss-making companies into profitable juggernauts. Now, Carlos's name had become incredibly famous, not only in Japan, but across the entire world, and his name and photograph started appearing in major newspapers and prestigious magazines, leading him to receive one award after another. The sheer scale of his immense fame can be gauged by the absolute fact that a comic book was launched in his name in Japan, of which more than 1 million copies were sold. People all over Japan started looking at him with profound respect, and now, whichever restaurant he went to, people would stand up and start clapping for him. Many years had passed since this alliance, and during this time, Renault and Nissan touched remarkable new heights of success. Then came the year 2005, when the CEO of the Renault company officially retired. After this retirement, Carlos was made the CEO of Renault, and for the first time in history, it happened that at the same time, one single person was the CEO of 2 massive companies. In this way, Carlos had become the CEO of the 2 biggest car companies in the entire world. Due to handling the immense responsibilities of 2 companies simultaneously, the pressure on Carlos had increased significantly, and his family even advised him to resign from one company, but he flatly refused to do so. The salary that Carlos received as a CEO from one company alone was a staggering $7 million. Although this massive salary was considered appropriate according to foreign company CEO standards, according to Japanese company standards, this salary was outrageously high. Because of Carlos's massive salary, this was the exact hatred that eventually forced Carlos to flee from Japan. Carlos had a deep fondness for living a highly luxurious life, and this was the precise reason why he organized massive, extravagant parties and simultaneously bought incredibly expensive things for himself and his family. He had his very own private jet and also a luxurious yacht, the price of which was a breathtaking $10 million. Because of his intense passion for cars, he had also bought many luxury and expensive vehicles for himself and was living a life full of absolute pomp and show with his hard-earned money. While on one hand, in Japan, prominent government ministers and company heads traveled to their offices on bicycles, the people there were left in absolute shock seeing Carlos's expensive cars and his flamboyant lifestyle, and they began to genuinely hate him. And this same hatred brought a turning point in Carlos's life on November 19, 2018, that changed his life forever and ever. This was the very day when Carlos had a highly important meeting with Nissan's board of directors, and Carlos was in Paris at that specific time. Carlos finished his work in Paris, boarded his luxurious private jet, and departed for Tokyo, Japan. But the moment Carlos's plane landed in Tokyo, he fell into absolute astonishment and confusion, seeing the bizarre scene there. Carlos saw that the Japanese police were already waiting for him on the plane's runway, and as soon as the plane landed, the police surrounded the plane from all four sides, entered the plane, and arrested him immediately. A panicked Carlos desperately asked the police why he was being arrested, in response to which a police officer informed him that he was being arrested for the crime of financial fraud. After the sudden arrest, the police took him and locked him up in jail, and this shocking news spread like wildfire from Japan to the entire world. Every single news channel and every major newspaper was showing this breaking news, because of which the shares of the Nissan company started falling very rapidly. Meanwhile, Carlos was completely unaware of exactly why he had been locked in jail. Carlos was now waiting inside the jail for the moment his company, Nissan, would send lawyers to get him out. But he received a massive, devastating shock when he found out that the company had immediately appointed one of the board of directors as the new CEO. This new CEO came to a press conference and announced that during an internal investigation, CEO Carlos Ghosn was found guilty of financial fraud, and they were immediately fired from the company. The specific allegation was that he hid a massive corporate retirement fund from the tax department to evade taxes. Carlos defended himself, stating the exact amount had not even been decided yet, so he couldn't possibly report money he had never even received. Carlos instantly smelled a massive conspiracy and told the police he was being violently framed, but they ignored him. Despite lacking concrete evidence, the police threw Carlos into Kosugi prison, keeping him in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day for 3 agonizing months. The Nissan board also leveled false accusations, claiming he used company money to purchase private properties in Paris, Beirut, and Brazil, and spent $700,000 on a personal birthday party at the Palace of Versailles. Carlos explained that the properties were legally registered under the company for official meetings, and the party was actually the 15th anniversary celebration of the Renault-Nissan partnership. The dark reason behind this betrayal was that the French government had recently purchased a massive stake in Renault. Nissan's board of directors was terrified that a full merger would completely erase Nissan's existence, leaving only the Renault name. To stop this, they made Carlos the ultimate sacrificial lamb, framing him in a fake fraud case. Carlos endured grueling 14-hour interrogations and was denied contact with his family, eventually paying $14 million across 2 bail bonds. The court sought to completely break his spirit. They confiscated his Lebanese and Brazilian passports, forbade him from leaving Japan, seized his electronics, and cruelly banned him from contacting his wife and children. Realizing he would never get justice and fearing for his family's safety, he sent his wife and children to Beirut. Trapped and isolated, Carlos bought a hidden burner phone and began making covert calls from his bathroom. He assembled a shadow team of 10 to 15 highly specialized individuals whose identities remain largely a mystery. Escaping by sea would take too long, and leaving through standard airport security was impossible without his passports. However, the team discovered a massive loophole at a small airport in Osaka. The security X-ray scanners were too small to fit large musical instrument boxes. On December 29, 2019, the daring escape plan was set into motion. Carlos invited scandal journalists to stand outside his house. Terrified of a media spectacle, the police monitoring him immediately fled the scene. Seizing this tiny window, Carlos disguised himself in a mask and long jacket and slipped out to the Grand Hyatt Hotel. There, he met 2 of his covert team members, Mike Taylor and George Zayek, who had flown into Japan on a private jet posing as musicians. The 3 men took a train to Osaka and rushed to a hotel room where 2 massive musical instrument boxes awaited. One of the boxes had been modified with small breathing holes. Carlos climbed inside, and his team covered him with a white cloth, locked the box, and had hotel staff wheel the fragile instruments out to a van. At the Osaka airport, Mike and George approached the same customs officers who had processed their entry that morning. To distract them, The men begged the officers to handle the boxes with extreme care and urged them not to delay their flight, claiming they were rushing to a second concert in Istanbul because they were flying on a private jet and the boxes couldn't fit the scanners. The officers waved them right through without a single check. The box containing the Billionaire CEO was loaded into the plane's cargo hold. Carlos remained frozen in total darkness for 30 agonizing minutes until he finally heard the engines roar and felt the plane take off. His team unlocked the box and Carlos stepped out a free man. He flew to Istanbul, switched to a second private jet, and landed in Beirut, Lebanon within an hour. As a respected Lebanese citizen, he was warmly welcomed and congratulated by customs officers upon arrival. Safe from Japanese authorities, Carlos held an explosive press conference, exposing the Nissan board's conspiracy to the world. While the humiliated Japanese government issued an Interpol arrest warrant, Lebanon refused to hand him over. France also later issued an arrest warrant over unproven fraud rumors. To this day, Carlos Ghosn remains a fugitive, unable to leave Lebanon without facing immediate arrest. The genius CEO, who miraculously saved 2 dying mega-corporations, continues to live in secret with his family, the ultimate sacrificial lamb of a bitter corporate war. This was the incredible, breathtaking story of a genius CEO who took 2 sinking companies to massive new heights. But due to their internal, bitter corporate politics, he himself was made the ultimate scapegoat. How did you like this mind-blowing story? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. We will meet again in the next video with another amazing story.